Yes, hi. Yeah, some people got a little bit wet in the rain. But yeah, we're here for the panel, very excited. So my name is Simon and I'm moderating that panel, but I want to actually give everybody here quickly the possibility to introduce yourself. So let's start with a quick round of introduction, name and the company you're representing, and how it improves the infrastructure landscape in Web3.
Yeah, so I'm Amadeo from YieldNest, a liquid recycling protocol. Hello? Okay, yeah. A liquid recycling, quite literally, we both got hit by the rain, but we're still going on. And we are building liquid recycling protocol vertically across all the different recycling protocols and building custom structured products for restaking tokens across ETH layer 1, Bitcoin, and other blockchains, BNB, etc. in the future, starting with EigenLayer, Symbiotic, and Nectar potentially in the future. Yeah.
Nice. Hello, everybody. I'm Dillon Hanson. I'm on the DIA team. We're providing cross-chain oracles. We're live on 51 different chains. We take a little bit of a different approach towards sourcing. We source our data directly from DEXs and centralized exchanges, so it allows us to have more of a transparent flow of data in terms of providing, transparency about where the data is coming from, and allows us to have a rather large and comprehensive support of all of the different types of assets that are being traded, specifically across DEXs, right? That's where a lot of assets are, of course, being traded. So we focus on having a very comprehensive asset coverage.
Hi, hello. Is it on? Hi everyone, I'm Rose from StakeStone. So we're building a liquidity infra layer. We're building the universal standard of liquid ETH and BTC backed by a adaptive staking network. So you can think about us as a liquidity infrastructure, redistributing like staked ETH and staked Bitcoin, building that universal standard of liquid ETH and distributing across omni-chain ecosystems and protocols. Currently we have about over 170K ETH staked across 140K users across the globe, and yeah.
Okay, hello. Oh, it's too loud. My name is Taras. Okay, my name is Taras. I've been in crypto field for the last, I think, 7 years and created a bunch of different projects, mostly connected with Ethereum, with another networks as well. And now as a co-founder in Roketo, we build and create layer 2 solution for consumer applications, and that's why I really interested in how this space will grow and will develop. And also I participated in a project called BlastUP. It's a launchpad on Blast, another one great L2 solution that bring to the field really new mechanics that I also research and would like to discuss it more. Yeah, thank you.
And I'm Jack, and I'm head of growth at Routescan. Routescan is the world's first unified multi-chain block explorer platform, and its long tagline means simply that we build block explorers, but we build it at a unified level. So we market it as like Etherscan times DBank. So everything that Etherscan has, but in the unified way that DBank offers.
Yeah, amazing. Very interesting projects here. But when we talk about infrastructure, there is a little bit the saying that everybody is focusing on infrastructure in Web3, but not really there is enough focus on actual consumer focusing applications, which is basically ultimately what we need, right? So how do you see that? Let's start with Amadeo again.
Yeah, so I think we can abstract away the complexities. For example, in restaking, it's a very, very low level, complicated infrastructure, and that's not for everybody. But if they want to have their productive assets, they can very easily restake and just have their assets. I always say instead of parking your assets at a bank, you can park your assets in crypto and let your assets be productive. And I think that's how we can make it more easier for consumers. And internally, we should talk deep about infrastructure, but then external, we should make it easy for the users by making easy products like what StakeStone does or what YieldNest does and other projects. Make it very easy for the user, and then on the background add value to the underlying infrastructure.
Oh, cool. Dillon, how does DA approach this?
So, actually, I might have to use hers again. So I'm on behalf of DIA, I think we're of the mindset that the more infrastructure, honestly, the better. I mean, in the Oracle space, right, where we're coming from, can't anchor enough on the importance and the value of redundancy. And I think this applies across all infrastructure. And I think that when you look at like the access to developer tooling, it's extremely important to have different developer tools and to have actually the competition within that space, right? That's being driven by this like saturation of infrastructure, because it just drives everybody to continually improve and refine the product. So I'm actually a fan of all of the different, like the saturation of infrastructure providers in the space, and let's see. I guess that's pretty much it. I had something else there, but I'll pass it on for now.
Okay, thank you. But I want to go. I like the thought.
Yeah.
But on the other hand side, like yes, if everybody just builds infrastructure, who builds then the actual applications?
Right. But again, those applications will require this infrastructure. I think that reminds me of the right. So those applications will come, and I'm a strong believer in that. But without the right tooling, without the right redundancies, it's going to limit the ultimately how far we can go within those applications, how much flexibility there is, and how much can actually be built. And what I also wanted to say to this actually is that, at least from the Oracle perspective, sure, the amount of oracles in the space are definitely growing, something I've noticed actually uptick in like the last 12 months, especially as we go to these conferences. But the demand for Oracle tooling is growing at a faster pace, as seen by the amount of applications using it, and as seen by all of these different roll-ups and chains that are now like kind of the hot space to be in, I would say, in terms of all of the different chains that we see launching across the industry. And so I personally don't think it's necessarily oversaturated at the moment, but curious to hear everybody else's thoughts.
Yeah. What do you think, Rose?
Yeah, I definitely think we need infrastructure, but we also need adoption, right? We also need application level, easy to use, as you mentioned, like abstracting all that away. So when developers or like founders are building products, they need to look at how to abstract that complexity away from the end user. So that's what we have built. Like, we think about us as a liquidity infrastructure, and basic because our like Minter contract and strategy vault contract are separate. This way we can change these underlying assets fairly easily, and we have like an on-chain proposal mechanism to like, it's like MakerDAO for Liquid ETH. You can vote, binary vote which native asset to deploy into to get that yield source. And it's a very complicated thing to like stake and then restake and then like yield farm and then like looping and all that Pendle stuff. So I think if there's an end product that's like what we're building, Liquid ETH, for the universal standard of Liquid ETH, for the end user, it's a rebalancing token, it's an omni-chain like OFT standard. It makes it very easy for like mass adoption, it makes it very easy for DeFi integration, and it makes it very easy for like institutional adoption. And yeah, you don't need to change the ticker symbol when you're like changing your underlying assets. And I think that's what needs to happen for mass adoption built on solid infrastructure.
Okay, Taras, I think you touched before that you enable actually end user applications.
Yeah, I just like, I think that we definitely need to get the point where a lot of consumer application can easily get and be built on top of all layer 2s, roll-ups, layer 1s, no matters. But in terms of infrastructure, as everybody say that infrastructure is like important, and it's a huge challenge, to be honest, because like, for example, like 30 years ago, we have nothing, and then TCP/IP appeared, and there was nothing around. There was no browsers, for example, and I think somebody asked same questions, to be honest, and like how it will be working. So then browser appeared, then appeared like mobile phones. Now we have applications, And it took a lot of time, to be honest, like decades. And crypto field is very challenging, way more than that we had before. Because before, it was just like way of communication between people around the world. And crypto is something that way more deep. It's about communication, about decentralization, about financial at the same time. So we need to provide all of this infrastructure while we're thinking about all of these 3 points, and it's tough. And that's why infrastructure will be built, I think, for a long, long time to achieve the point where we can really have these very big applications for like big audience. So yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, I agree. But didn't you say that you enable applications with Roketo?
Yeah. So actually, we're trying to build layer 2 that focused on launching this consumer application that like have specific needs, like gain big amount of users in like very short time. So it's not like DeFi focused infrastructure. So, but still, I think a lot of L2s will provide different infrastructures for different needs, and that's why we need this. So yeah.
Yeah, get it. And then Giacomo, or Jack, you said. So where would you position Routescan? Is it like infrastructure, or is it already an end user application?
So, well, it is both. But you know, just to like connect with everyone, like traditional finance has been developing infrastructure for 900 years. So the thing is, crypto has come at a time where it magically needs to solve problems for 7 billion people, and so that's not possible. And because you know there are scale problems, and like us, when we look at the block explorer market, the biggest like it's not even a competitor because you know it's about Bitcoin, but blockchain.com could be the biggest player in the industry if we look at it this way, and it has some like I don't know 1 billion users over a year, but the thing is, one, those users may be returning, so we don't even know if that's 1 billion, maybe even less, and a lot of people just maybe use Bitcoin because they are maybe from VanEck or from whatever other firm that is filing the new ETF. And so the basic idea is that a block explorer still hasn't found its way. So to ask your question, are we an infrastructure provider or analytics tool for end users? And it's still not. So it's so obvious that every user uses the block explorer as a public good, and no one even knows that chain teams pay for explorers. There's like, oh no, yeah, it's just there, and you just use it, and this is so weird. And but at the same time, like the simple guy doesn't know how AWS works or how does a website pays its bills. So this is also another question. So yeah, maybe we are and a user faced, but also like EtherScan, for example, is heavy developer focused. And when you look at the users, they don't understand anything about what's going on because it's just tables. And so you need more natural language. And so yes, block explorers still need to find their way.
If it's a developer tool or let's say a power user tool, then it's probably more infrastructure than end user, no?
Yes, but the thing is, when I talk about block explorers with people that don't know anything about block explorers and anything about crypto, I say, you know about your home banking app? Okay, that is a private application. Imagine that you have that, but publicly, and your transactions are just covered in strings, but it's that. And so really everyone wants to know where their money went, but they don't want to know like everything that's behind it. So
okay, that's a good analogy. I like it.
yeah.
So we reverse the order now because the next question is what do you think is the biggest breakthrough that we saw in the last maybe 3 to 5 years in terms of infrastructure? Like there was a lot of talk about like, yeah, we need to build more infrastructure, but like also let's celebrate a little bit like what cool stuff was built. So if you want to give that answer, Jack.
Yeah, so I think, I can only talk from my perspective, because I don't have the, biggest vision of this. But, from our side, the Block Explorer is about, I think we had a pretty like big way into making the first indexing engine that it's natively multi-chain. So what I mean is that we index everything in a unified way, and so when we need to like give you transactions on everything or aggregated way, we can just do it without you having to switch between one Explorer or one API and the other, and so yeah, maybe you can also like question that API providers were doing this or Node RPC providers, but the thing is, Node RPC providers don't have the same use case as Block Explorer have. So if you go to Routescan, you simply like, if you're using one chain, maybe you get an airdrop on the other and you don't even know it. On Routescan, you won't know it. But on Routescan, you will know it if it's on a chain we support.
Yeah, I like that approach actually. So also a Rainbow wallet can switch away from you switch the chains to an overview.
I personally like Zerion. Because it's really, really focused in this way, and it simply switches.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. So Taras, big breakthroughs last 3 to 5 years.
I do think that the biggest breakthrough is connected with the scaling of Ethereum. So it's connected first of all with Ethereum 2.0 itself. And with all these conceptions about L2s around Ethereum, and not only Ethereum, to be honest, Bitcoin as well. And I think these two like big infrastructure changes lead us to this DeFi market that appeared like in last 5 years, to be honest. So yeah, it's definitely landscape of how crypto working now and 5 years ago is different, way different. So yeah.
Yeah, L2s is big, yeah. What do you think, Rose?
Yeah, I agree what you just said. I think definitely like, POS, Ethereum, all that, Shanghai upgrade and all that, and, layer 2 make it possible as well, and staking, restaking, definitely like the biggest innovations. And I think on the Bitcoin side, I'm excited to see like what kind of infra is going to be available for Bitcoin.
But Bitcoin also had like interesting stuff. So recently I played around a little bit as an ETH maxi with Bitcoin. and they have all these Lightning Network payments. I was in the Institute of Crypto Anarchy in Prague, and then I bought a beer with Bitcoin and Lightning Network. So what are the innovations there that you can highlight?
I think on the Bitcoin staking side right now, like the biggest like available interim solution, I guess, like Babylon staking time lock. But I think there could be a lot of space in like the ZK proving for Bitcoin, and I don't know, ZK co-processing or yeah.
Okay, cool stuff. So ZK and staking, that comes to Bitcoin. Nice. Okay, Dillon, what do you think?
I mean, I agree. I think those are really great answers. One other area I think is of interest to me in terms of the BD side of things and seeing the industry grow from somebody whose perspective might be less technical is no-code developer frameworks like roll-up as a service solutions, right? Where now we're giving people the opportunity who don't have traditional, let's say, like Solidity developer experience, we're giving them the tools to actually build and deploy roll-ups. And I think that's just gonna continue to scale this space. Like we're a space that's pretty much been limited in terms of developers within Solidity, but especially outside of Solidity, right? And so from that perspective, I think it's going to continue to drive and bring capital into this space, continue to enable people to have the tools to build applications, and hopefully we get to that. This is, again, getting back to like infrastructure that's ultimately, hopefully enabling this mass adoption end user application.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of innovation happening, and a lot of infrastructure also becomes obsolete. So a lot of infrastructure that's been built that looks very promising, like 80-90% of it will not be useful. So it's the place moving so fast. And if you look at the traditional IT markets, it's the same way, right? So there's teams, IT teams building certain infrastructure software for many years, and then there's this other thing that comes out, and now we have like a complete new system. So the biggest innovation I think zero knowledge proves definitely, but there's still a lot of infrastructure to be built there. So it's kind of funny where the optimistic rollups and L2s are getting very good. All the infrastructure is getting ready, and then DeFi in itself, it's like amazing. Then the zero knowledge rollups and et cetera, they are very promising, but a lot of infrastructure needs to be built out. When the zero knowledge infrastructure is built out, a lot of the other infrastructure becomes obsolete. It's a very big dilemma, and I think the whole DeFi and crypto space is just ever evolving, and a lot of things will become obsolete, and a lot of new things will become the standards. And I think the blockchain space will, in a couple of years, will look completely different than it looks today. And I think it's just going to be, and especially that goes into restaking and proving, it's going to be more, instead of blockchains, I think it's going to be proof systems, where we're exchanging proofs with one another, and then the execution layer can actually be any other L2. So then it's like, it's just completely going to change everything, and everything is going to get very crazy. And I think we're going to see a really crazy DeFi summer coming up very soon, with a lot of new infrastructural promises that actually all look very good, and one of them will win. In software development, as we know, there's always 100 solutions to do something, and there's 10 ways to do it perfectly, and we will see what that is. We don't know, and I'm very excited to all of us to just build and see what makes the most sense. And it's really cool that we also have an economic and free market system around that, so we can actually just gamble on that and make really cool financial system around it as well. It's just fascinating adventure. Yeah.
Okay, that's well said. And especially when you go into like an next DeFi summer will come, there's a concern that I have to playing devil's advocates about, especially the L2 space. Let's start with that one. It's like the L2 space currently, I mean, as much as it also gives scalability, it also gives like liquidity fragmentation and also like terrible user experiences. Like, I mean, like I troubleshoot with a lot of my non-crypto friends stuff like, oh shit, I sent some money to that address and now I don't see it in my MetaMask anymore. And then you're like, okay, which chain was it? And then and then you have like funny stuff like, oh, it was actually a contract address that you have on L1, but on the L2 the contract address is not there. You know, all that stuff. So how did it get better, or are we like there's this saying of like it gets worse before it gets better? So where are we standing here? But what are solutions to that problem? What do you think, Amadeo?
Yeah, so it's a very funny thing. As I said, like Vitalik and the really deep like blockchain research is because it's actually really early technology, right? So you can see that eventually it will just be proof systems, right? Like probably, like if you look theoretically, it's going to be proof systems. So a lot of the optimistic stuff might not be relevant, but it might be. It's a very hard thing to think about. Like from a pure research perspective, you think zero ZK snarks or that's where it's going to go probably theoretically. So then it's like we need to make our L1 settlement layer completely focus on high settlement assurances, and that is the main thing to focus on, because if we focus on that, we will become actually relevant. We actually stay relevant, right? Or it's like we I think it's the application layers will. I'm a big believer that the application layers will actually capture all the modes, will capture all the most of the value, and the infrastructure layer, like you see now, the internet is the internet cables or the internet technology itself is less valuable than Google and Amazon, etc. combined. So I think that's where it's going to go. But before we get there, we get all these very interesting infrastructural debates and fights. And your question was like where like the
so it's a problem currently, and how can we solve it?
Yeah, so I think I think Ethereum takes the right middle ground approach, and it's very painful. But I think things like, for example, Solana or other things will become completely obsolete. If like Move or something becomes like adopted, then that technology becomes obsolete again, right? So it's a lot of things that we are now very like debating on and putting money on, like EOS or Cardano, that was just in the slide, the Cardano problem. So you get like all these things will just become absolute at some point, right? And then something else wins. You see the same thing in the internet. So I think as an Ethereum community, I feel we're taking the right approach. We're focusing on settlement assurances and then letting all these other L2s figuring out like what is the best execution. We will get an execution layer, a data availability layer, and a settlement layer. And I think that's where we need to focus on. And I think that's actually the right approach. And we actually just be like, okay, if you're a user of this product, okay, yes, we can use Bitcoin, use ETH. It's expensive, but then you have your settlement assurances, you sell sovereignty, and you have instant settlement assurances with instant physical delivery. That's huge. So if you want to use it, use that. And as soon as you use that, it's much better than traditional finance, et cetera, et cetera. So it's fine. If we want to go mass adoption, we just have still a lot of work to do, and I think that's it. Yeah.
Would you agree, Dillon?
Yeah. So I agree with what you said initially with the fact that like it gets better before it gets worse, right? Like I always talk about how we see as the space evolves, liquidity and user and asset fragmentation is seemingly increasing. But I'm looking forward to this sort of inception, or like this moment where that reverts back towards collective liquidity and less fragmentation. And so what I see, I think two things that were already mentioned that I would kind of echo here on this question is abstraction, right? I think that account abstraction and furthermore ultimately chain abstraction will help with user access, right? Decreasing like user fragmentation to these different chains. And then to talk about what we're doing on sort of the infrastructure side, right now that's just how this space is. So since I've joined DIA, it's always been a thing that, let's embrace this fragmentation as an opportunity while this exists. We see that, like at DIA, we're pricing assets across all these different chains, and it's just a fact that there's different liquidities and there's different varying asset prices on one chain as opposed to another chain. And in some instances, to provide an aggregate price feed across all chains for a given asset is actually not 100% correct. And so what we're doing is, in different cases, we're providing very granular very granular pricing dependent on how that asset's being traded on the specific chain. How we're doing that, again, kind of originates or dates back to how we're sourcing data directly from these DEXs and from these centralized exchange marketplaces. But like a lot of these assets are trading on like the given DEX of Arbitrum or the given Polygon DEX or something, and we're able to basically look at the pricing of these assets in a very granular fashion. But one other thing I'll add here, and I just want to say, is that I think that getting towards permissionless infrastructure deployments in which any developers can take the DIA oracles and deploy them on any chain that they want without needing our touch point or our approval of that is where infrastructure needs to go to support this fragmentation.
I want to hand this over actually directly to Jack, because when Dillon says like permissionless Oracle deployment on any chain, I wonder, like, especially now when with the rollup as a service thesis plays out that every app will be a chain. So can you integrate then every of these chains into Routescan?
So TLDR, it's impossible, but we're striving to make it work. For example, we got a grant from retro funding, from the Optimism Foundation, and it allowed us to sustain a commitment, let's say, to make a free block explorer for every chain that it's on the super chain until we get funding. And even if they want to pay us, we don't accept money. Because otherwise there would be a negotiation and so on, and we don't want to have negotiation. We just want to provide a free block explorer to everyone, and they can pay for other services like, I don't know, 24/7 support or whatever. But the basic idea is that we don't want any friction whatsoever to index as many chains that we can. And still, we only index 9 chains out of 18 in the super chain. That's why that's because most chains don't even reply, because they're just focused on what they do. They don't care about anything else. They don't even know what the block explorer is, maybe. And in other cases, if they do, like, they're focused on other things, but they don't have like instructions to run a node. So even if we want to run a node to index the chain, we can't, because there's no instruction. And so there really is, we're trying to unify everything, but there's still fragmentation and like upstream. And so that is one of the issues that we have. And on the other side, we are seeing Routescan as a collection of ecosystem explorers, and every ecosystem explorer has multiple explorers behind, like below. So like Routescan is the global platform, and then we have like a Cosmos ecosystem explorer, a Bitcoin one with all the L2s, AVM, whatever side chains, and then on Avalanche, Flare, Boba, whatever ecosystem we have, we just try to like make the user understand what is the different levels, and then hopefully we'll also find a way to have a labeling for L2s, L3s, and because that is really a mess. And yeah, but those, just one more thing is just one like comment on L3s, and they're so good at scaling, but they're so unsustainable, like zero sustainability, because they make like billion transactions per second, but they cost so little money because they need to settle on something that is already settling on something else, and and so like no L3 is actually sustainable, and so they don't have money to do anything, and so how can that work? What?
Might as well be an aggregator.
Yeah.
Makes no sense in L3.
Yeah, it's real.
It just makes no sense.
It makes no sense. If I need to spend one billionth of a cent to make a transaction, and I can make a transaction for moving every fucking Pokemon, sorry about that, but every Pokemon in every
it
direction.
makes sense in certain use cases, but not as a whole consumer chain, I would say.
Yeah, but you don't need a block explorer. Like it's just, but if you need a block explorer, like DeFi L3s, that's a mess.
What do you think, Rose?
Yeah, I think liquidity fragmentation is definitely what's stopping, there's so many, like we've observed the latest ZK layer 2s who have no transactions, no liquidity, which is why our liquid ETH is an omni-chain design, and we make sure that there's, we work with like PMM and like different market makers to make sure that there's readily exit liquidity for Stone ETH holders who wants to swap back to Ethereum on different omni-chain solutions. So like instead of like building a pool here and there, like all the dexes are building like a different dex on a different chain, right? But they're the same team. And I think that's just a waste of resources. So instead of doing that, we focus on having these market makers provide easily, like readily exit liquidity for our Stone users. And I think that solves the liquidity fragmentation problem.
Oh, that's good to hear that you think already and have solutions for the problems that are outlined. Taras, what do you think about the problems we have?
Yeah, I couldn't be more agreed with all the speakers, because I think all this fragmentation, it's a huge problem, because like everyone said about fragmentation, but in different parts, so liquidity, it's users, it's even with all this explorer part, also it's fragmentation. So, I think right now we have this intention to build solution that somehow do this interoperability and reduce this amount of fragmentation. And we see like Aglayer from Polygon, we see Superchain from Paystack, but still it's on a very, very early stage, I think. And I don't know, to be honest, how right now we can build it better. I think that's the biggest good thing that the biggest DeFi ecosystem right now is Ethereum and all these chains around Ethereum, and they somehow support this standard that Ethereum provides, and that's good. So maybe it will help to achieve the point when we will solve this problem faster. But it's tough one. It's really tough one, and it's, I think, the main problem for following years. I think for 3-5 maybe.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What can I bring as a last question? Yeah, maybe we touched quickly on CK. That is kind of the solutions to all problems. But I also have like a devil's advocate here that I want to quickly get like some responses. Is like the problem with CK is also that it's so complex that people do not understand it anymore. Like, so when you interact with a system, I think like now when I send a transaction to Ethereum, I can even explain my grandmother like after an hour maybe why it's secure. when it's like encrypted and you don't know, you're on the block explorer, you don't really see it anymore. And if that goes up, I mean, it's good, but on the other hand side, it's less understandable and then maybe also less trusted, I don't know.
No, I don't say ZK is a solution to everything. I just say like we will figure out the best solution. ZK is now looking to be a promising solution, but the design of Ethereum is like very open, and then everybody comes with their own solutions, and then like the execution layer fights on the best execution layer, the DA layer will fight for the best DA layer, and then Ethereum kind of chooses we are the settlement layer, right? That's that's now the case. When I look at it this objectively. Yeah, and I think that it's just very early still for a lot of really big consumer apps, and a lot of big consumer apps will indeed then go on layer 2s, like Base or other layers, and I think that's like now the state of it. And if some of this deep research will evolve, then we will see how that's going to look. And I think it's too early to say the end game. I think nobody knows the end game, and we're just all battling towards what the end game will be. But right now, I think the best what we have is things like Base or Arbitrum or Optimism, and we need to find a solution to see like, okay, if we figure out the way to kind of settle, like build execution layers and exchange proofs with one another. It doesn't matter which chain you're on. You can just be on L1 and just exchange a transaction with each other, and that will work as well. So I think if that is actually figured out, then we can build amazing applications, etc., and that will make way more sense than now, and they will overrule most of the things that are out there right now, I think. And yeah, it's just very early stage still, and I'm looking forward to see where we're all gonna be in a couple of years. Yeah.
Cool. Dillon, what do you think? Like closing thoughts?
I think that, at least talking again from the Oracle perspective, the demand for Oracle use cases is constantly evolving. And like you said, nobody really knows the end goal or the end use case or the end needs or architectural needs of all of these different types of, let's say, infrastructure providers. But I think that's what makes this space so exciting, and that's what makes being on the infra side so exciting. Like, at least even over the last 2 years at DIA, right? It went from like NFT oracles to the need for, right? Now we look back and it's like, and to the need for like LST oracles, right? And now we're getting into the huge unlock that is real world assets. To anchor a little bit back to like the ZK topic, I think that on-chain proofs for off-chain data, real world asset data, is going to be essential, critical within that specific type of use case. But yeah, I think that infrastructure is just like contrary to what one might think when like, oh, infrastructure, right? I don't know if it necessarily gets the layman like that excited, but once you're in it, I think it's like super exciting because you get to look at how everything across the landscape, across the crypto landscape is evolving, and the goal is to position yourself to cater and support that growth. So again, just interested to explore how we can all continue to align on synergies and collaborate to move this forward.
Yeah, Rose, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's important to build a product that's adaptable to different narratives, right? So staking is not just staking Ethereum, Bitcoin to secure like layer 1, layer 2, but also you also need different mechanisms like DPing, AI. Like there's like different use cases for staking or like running validators and stuff. So I think it's important that the infra itself, it has to be modular, right? You can change the underlying assets, you can integrate easily with different protocols, and I think that's where we can achieve mass adoption.
Yes, that's true. So I do think that, as I said before, we're in very early position right now. So even like ZK is very early, and there are like plenty of different technologies that could help us to like achieve this point of like good infrastructure finally. Now, right now, like very promising FHE technology from my perspective. Still, I'm not sure about math because it shouldn't be ready, but a lot of projects around appearing. And maybe it's even will be more like wider than ZK at some point, who knows? Because like when first L2's came, it was just optimistic model. Nobody, almost nobody, I think, know about ZK back in the days. So yeah. So and from like another point of view about user experience, we definitely need to provide the better user experience, and it's tough one. But still, you said that it's tough to say your grandma how like all of this works, but from my point of view, it's also tough to say my grandma about even how mobile application works, because like it's just like this huge like gap between our understanding how everything works. So there will be a point also when young guys will grow up and they know everything about like crypto from the scratch, to be honest. So, and now even like all these strange consumer apps like Hamster Combat, I think everybody knows, like 6 years old guys playing in this thing, and like who knows what will be in 10 years. So they already know about crypto, and like in 6 years I didn't know anything, to be honest, about any things like this, like maybe about Lego. Yes, so we will see how it will like develop, and because of all of this. So yeah.
Okay, Jack.
From our side, I think we will see the block explorer that we now provide, that is also pretty aligned with the one the Routescan provides, be more and more complex to satisfy the needs of more and more developers. Like, for example, like a few weeks ago, I think we extended support for ERC 4337, so we now show user operations correctly and nested. So, because for example, we had Kinto that had, the layer 2 Kinto that had like some custom way of doing account abstraction. So, and so we will see like this kind of product going farther and farther away from the users and being more like the Apple developer, you know, tooling, and more tools that have like super fast and super easy experience to just do the home banking, you know, and it's like dbank, you know, and but also some like tools. I don't like to say Arkham or Nansen, because I think they're really too complex still for this. Like, you know, simple analysts, or even like on-chain solutions like ZachXBT that don't have a simple way of tracking the flows from any type of chain, because like from non-UTXOs and EVM chains, that's okay, but you know, what if you like switch from Fuel to Bitcoin back to X chain on Avalanche to whatever other chain you want to be, it's a VM with a custom language. So yeah.
Okay, cool. I think that's the end of the panel. Do we have time for questions from the audience, or?
I am using a microphone that's not working, but luckily I've got some volume. We actually don't. We're running 10 minutes late.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm really sorry about that, but that doesn't take away the opportunity to meet each other here in the hallway if any of you guys have questions. I'm just here to thank our panelists, Dillon, Giacomo, Rose, Amadeo, Taras, and Simon for hosting. Please give them a round of applause.